You are now tuned in to the Triple Threat Podcast.
And thanks, everyone. Welcome back to Triple Threat Podcast, another episode. Ken Triplett along with my partner in crime as always. It's been a great season so far, Jordan Triplett. Jordan, how are you doing?
Feeling good. Merry Christmas, everybody. It might be Christmas when you're listening to this. It might be after that. But either way, we're putting this out on Christmas. So happy holidays to whatever you celebrate.
Absolutely. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas to everyone out there listening to this podcast, and to our devoted listeners. We thank you so much for being there with us each and every episode that we do the Triple Threat Podcast. So, Jordan's at the end of the year, and thank God the Bills have already clinched their second playoff spot within 3 years under Sean McDermott, which has really been, when you look at the history, obviously, has really been just a phenomenal job that he's done so far with this team, and Brandon Beane with this franchise and the roster turnover they've had. They've done just an absolutely marvelous job. So I just want to give them kudos to those accomplishments and giving us something to look forward to. Finally, that's something concrete and something that's real that Bills fans can really hitch their wagons to and circle all year long. So without further ado, let's talk about the Bills game against the Patriots. The Bills unfortunately dropped that game 24-17 in Foxborough. And I can't say personally it was surprising. I predicted 27-17. I just didn't have the feel that the Bills were ready to make that next step, so to speak, only because the Patriots really had something to play for, and that was obviously the division. They could clinch that day and also still have the opportunity to, maybe get some home field advantage at that time. So I just felt like the Bills didn't have enough experience to climb over that hurdle, and I think in a game like that, it comes down to the team that makes the least amount of mistakes, or maybe that one mistake that really turns the tide of a game. And you could see that play out this past Sunday in Foxborough.
Clearly, the team that's been there before, the Patriots, they knew exactly what they needed to do, exactly what they had to get done. They executed. And clearly, the Bills, they look like they had some nerves. Oftentimes, just because they just not are familiar with the situation for a possible division winning game right here, and they'll get there. But the experience right here for this game and for this situation was vital for them in terms of their overall growth. But like you said, we didn't expect to win. Neither of us predicted a win. But it is nice to see them compete and stay in these games, because I grew up with the Patriots blowing us out pretty much every game, and to be in these games and be competitive, not only in terms of the game, but the season, it's a good, encouraging sign.
Absolutely. And, when you look at these games with the Bills, and I agree with you 1,000%, you look at the history of how the Bills have played the Patriots and in some meaningful games during the regular season. I agree with you that there were some early jitters, especially Josh Allen. You could tell by the way that he was throwing the ball. He was really not as nervous as the first game, but you could tell that he had some nerves and did not play well. In general, he needs a few quarters to warm up, which is why he's so good in the fourth quarter. It's because, he'll throw some passes, he'll have some bad footwork, or he'll make some poor reads, and then he learns from his mistakes. And what we're all looking for as Bills fans is just more consistency in terms of learning from those mistakes, not having those mistakes happen again. And that's what we look to see in the third year next year for Josh Allen. That's the next step for him. But overall, I think you're right that the Bills got their feet wet, so to speak, and at least we can see on the field that physically, man for man, pound for pound, and athletically, the Bills can not only stay with this team, they can beat this team once all these intangibles come into play, being the experience, being, a couple of upgrades here or there, but they're so close. And that closest could be one or two players away or one or two playmakers away from really exploiting the Patriots and having their number for the next 10, 15 years.
It all starts with Brady and his eventual retirement. once that happens, we all know they'll go downhill. It might not be a severe drop, but anytime you lose a quarterback who is almost synonymous with greatest of all time in the NFL, there's going to be a drop off. And this Bills roster, they're saying with them right now, and they're only going to get better. The young guys only going to get better. Josh Allen, Singletary, Tremaine Edmonds, all young guys that this team drafted that'll just keep producing and keep getting better and better. And the Patriots roster, they'll get older and older. Brady will leave. Belichick will leave. And it really felt like if the Bills won, it was a changing of the guard game. But this is what I see as a precursor to that. I expect that to happen most likely next year, actually, that they steal at least one game from the team.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I'll take it a step further. The Bills are no longer afraid of Tom Brady. And as a Bills fan, I am no longer afraid of Tom Brady, only because you can see the physical deterioration. It's not much, but it's enough whereby he's actually just a regular quarterback now, the way I see him. Yep. He's human. He'll make some really great reads. He'll make some really good throws, but more than ever, you can see how much of a system quarterback he has been. It's because most of his successful passes are from plays that are misdirection, different types of gadget plays, so to speak. It's not just, hey, let me just drop back and pick you apart. These are already plays that have been, kind of scripted for him in his current skill set. So, again, definitely the Bills aren't afraid of him. I'm not afraid of him anymore as a fan. And there's a slight possibility, we've heard some rumors that he may not even be there next year. There's rumor that he's put his house up for sale in the Boston area and that he may not be back, that, the Patriots may just let him go and, try to hitch on somewhere else and they may be ready to move on from him. I don't believe that, but again, that's the rumor. But again, you just think of Tom Brady, yet another year older. I don't care how spry he is. He's not going to get better. Let's put it that way. And so, again, as a Bills fan, I'm not too worried.
Yeah, he's definitely on that curve of decline right now, and this is something that we've all been waiting for since, 2003. It's been a long time coming. The tenure of him killing the Bills is almost of legal age at this point, and I'm glad it's finally changing right now. And like you said, he's an average quarterback. They had him running an offense that you'd see from some undefeated high school football team that just has a coach that can just draw up these plays that take defenses off guard. And that's essentially what he did. All those misdirections. He ran essentially the same play with 4 different options. Either he hands that ball off, or he throws that screen, he throws that middle route to Edelman, or he goes deep, and that same fake handoff play misdirection every time. And that's what really gashed the Bills. And there's not much they could have done to stop it, because when you see that look so many times, you just don't know what they're going to do. And you kind of have to commit to something, because Brady's going to commit to his decision. And it's Tom Brady. He's going to make that right decision. So it was a sort of perfect game plan for Belichick, which is something that we expect. But obviously, something like that is not going to work forever. It's not sustainable.
Well, here's the thing that got me all week long before the game started, which is why I picked the Patriots to win that game 27-17, was because the Patriots kept saying, we are going to approach this game as a playoff game. And what that means is we're going to show you some new stuff. We're going to show you different sets that you haven't seen all year long, because it's a playoff game to us. And that's what teams do in the playoffs. They bring out new stuff. They bring out different looks. They bring out different coverages on the defensive side of the ball that you haven't seen all year long to throw you off guard. And what ended up happening in this game is that for the first half, the Bills weren't ready. I don't blame them. It was just a different set of plays, a different package of plays that they had to adjust to. And then what you saw in the second half was the adjustment. The Patriots those misdirection plays weren't as effective. The Bills defense slowed them down. Gave the offense a chance to get back into the game and eventually take the lead in this game. And so, you can see that thing unfold the way it's always been for this Bills team. Defensively, they may start out a little bit cold and a little bit sluggish, but come second, third, and especially the fourth quarter, they will shut you down. And I just think, again, just a little things, little experience that the Bills did get this year, and they will get in this upcoming playoff game in a couple weeks. And 1 or 2 playmakers, a wide receiver with size that has a bigger catch radius for Josh Allen. And here's a play that people may remember or not. Just a single pass play that went out to Beasley for a first down for about a 12 or 13 yard gain. And it was a play that looked like Josh Allen was off target because Beasley had to jump for the ball. Beasley's 5'8", and when you're 5'8" and you're catching passes from a guy who's 6'6", the ball is going to tend to be a little bit higher than what your middle radius or your waist is. Imagine him throwing that same pass to a receiver who's 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". He doesn't have to jump for that ball. The ball is right in his wheelhouse and with room to run. So these are the kind of nuances that the Bills are missing right now. I don't want to pick on the Bills' size at the receiver position, but I do think it is an issue. And I think it's something that the Bills don't need to run from. But if we can get some bigger receivers that can give Josh Allen more leeway in order for him not to throw every single pass pinpoint to a receiver who's only 5'8", I just think that's an issue. You throw it to a receiver who has a bigger catch radius, his passes are a lot more, and his field of error is much greatly reduced with a guy that can not only just jump for higher passes if it need be, but for not every single pass to be pinpoint to a guy simply who has longer arms, a longer reach, and more height. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's why he likes Dawson Knox so much, because he's 6'4", 254, a big, sure target. He's always throwing to him just because it's easy. A tight end is always the safety valve in an offense, but just being that advantage of being taller than the defensive backs or just having that larger catch radius clearly benefits him. And John Brown, he's looked great, and he's just 5'11". So imagine a guy like CeeDee Lamb or T. Higgins on the team from the draft that can just add that size and that vertical threat to the offense as well.
Absolutely. And one thing about Dawson Knox, I have an issue with him. I know he's only a rookie, so I'm going to give him some slack, but he's got to do a much better job of catching the football. It's just very simple. I think he has concentration lapses, and I think a lot of that came across in college, which is why he wasn't an earlier round draft pick. It's because teams saw that, he was really raw in that area, but physically, he's a beast. And, he can be a Gronkowski type of tight end for the Bills, but I think he's got to start. One of the things that the Bills like to do is throw deep to him, which worked last week, which was great. It was a great play. He almost scored a touchdown on that play. But I like to see him catch more 5, 7, 10-yard route patterns or some seam routes where he can, break loose for about 20, 25 yards. But it seems that any time that Allen wants to go to him, especially on third down, it could be third and short. He's trying to throw a 30, 40-yard pattern to him. I just think they need to pump the brakes a little bit on him. He may make those plays in practice, but it hasn't always translated to game situations. And I think they just need to make him more of a traditional tight end so that they can be more well-rounded for this offense moving forward. But no further ado, we're going to move on with the Bills' next opponent, the New York Jets. And what is a meaningless game for the Bills. They are locked into that 5th playoff spot for the AFC wild card. And so there's no need to win this game or lose this game. It's just a matter of whether or not the Bills want to rest their players or keep their players sharp for the playoff game. And I think most of Bills Mafia is kind of split on this subject. Where do you land on that, Jordan?
I say sit them all. I need this team at full strength. There's nothing that we can gain from this Jets game. I mean, besides pride and trash talking and just having the good feeling of being 4-2 in the division. But at the same time, what are you gaining from that? We're a football team trying to win playoff games. You want to see this team get more experience. So I say sit everybody. That includes Allen, Singletary. I would let Frank Gore play just so he can get his yards up, because that's something he clearly prides himself on, being on that all-time rushing list. So let him play, and I don't think anybody else really should that typically gets a lot of starter snaps on this team.
Yeah, I think Sean McDermott came out today as we are recording the show saying that Josh Allen will get some playing time. He didn't say how much. And even before he made that comment, I had the feeling that he was going to play Allen at least a half. Hopefully only plays him.
I'd give him a quarter.
I'd give him a quarter as well. Absolutely. But I think there needs to be some balance here. I think Allen, Singletary, Beasley, Brown need to sit. I think on defense, Edmonds, Milano, Trey White, those bad boys need to sit the entire game, even though that's not going to happen. You can at the very least, McDermott, please rest every single starter in the second half. I only want to see second stringers on that field in the second half because, again, it doesn't make any sense to keep playing your starters for a game that means nothing. And there's one other thing that people are not really thinking about when I go to Twitter and I go to other sites in terms of how Bills fans are thinking about this. What if the Bills would have won the division and gotten a bye? It's the same thing. That if you get the bye, you get the week off, your players are resting anyway. So had the Bills won the division, they would get a bye week. They need to treat this Jets game as a bye week. And again, that's why I agree with you 1,000,000%. Rest everybody, even though I don't think that's going to happen. I think you will see some starters, at least in the first half. But I better see second stringers that entire second half of this football game.
Yeah, and all the injuries we've had in terms of I mainly focus on the offensive line because we only have 9 linemen. We don't even have I'm looking at the roster right now. We have 2 backup tackles, and one of them's hurt still. I believe Nasheki is still hurt.
Yeah, he's still out.
So even one backup there, and that's rookie Ryan Bates. And then we have Ike Boger at the guard position as our only backup guard. And then Mitch Morris, he went down, and I would fully rest him this whole game. I wouldn't even allow him to touch the field for this game after seeing him go down briefly last week. Mm-hmm. So I would play Spencer Long. And, other than that, we really have depth at each position that we could play a few backups and still have a lot of success against. This is the Jets. Remember, we don't have to have a world-beating team to beat Adam Gase. It's been proven that other teams this year have done a lot more with a lot less than what we have against the Jets. So I'm not too worried about it. And like you said, it changes nothing. So I would give them a free bye week here. Give them some snaps in the first quarter, just so they have that momentum still going, still being fresh and not having that rustiness when it does come to the wild card weekend. But please don't play them past the second quarter.
Absolutely. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but if Josh Allen's going to play for a quarter, that's fine. But I think Devin Singletary needs to sit the entire game. Let's see TJ Yeldon out there get some snaps for the entire football game. Frank Gore, I know he's going to want to play because that's the kind of guy he is. Sprinkles a few snaps into Gore if need be. But TJ Yeldon needs to be the feature back against the Jets, which, is enough. We don't know what type of mentality this Jets team is going to have in terms of approaching this game. It's been a long season for them. It's been a disappointing season for them. I get the feeling they really don't like Adam Gase. Not that he's going to get fired or anything at the end of this year. The Jets are on record as saying that he's coming back next year, but we could see a Jets team that is, just wants to beat the Bills because it's the Bills and they don't like the Bills, or we could see a team that, if the Bills have a lead or are not budging, that in the second half they could do the run for the bus game. I've seen it so many times with the Buffalo Bills and other teams that it's the second half of the last game of a meaningless game, and all of a sudden you start to play the game like you're in the Pro Bowl. You're not trying to lay anybody out. You're not trying to sacrifice your body. You're just out there, playing, a recreational football game, and which is what is commonly known as the run for the bus game. And we could see that out of the Jets. So again, I think that all bodes to the need to rest your players as much as possible, because this game absolutely means nothing. All right. So having said that, the Bills will play in the playoffs, wild card matchup, 2 weeks from this Jets game. I'm sorry, 1 week from the Jets game. And the only 2 opponents that the Bills can play are the Houston Texans or the Kansas City Chiefs. And again, I think more people are kind of leaning towards one team over the other. I personally think that the best matchup for the Bills would be against the Houston Texans, and I'll explain why after I get your team. What do you think?
Yeah, I got the Texans as well. I read up on them a little bit more. I believe they have like the second worst pressure rate on defense, and that is exactly what this team needs. We've seen what happens when Josh Allen gets a clean pocket consistently. We saw that in the Cowboys game where he always had a clean pocket and he was dicing them up. So give Josh Allen a clean pocket. I'll take him any day. J.J. Watt is trying to come back from his torn pectoral muscle a little early, but even with a defensive player of the year multiple time like he is, that injury will definitely limit him, and they'll most likely limit his snaps as well. And if that's like the only major superstar on their defense that we have to worry about compared to the Chiefs, who have Tyrann Mathieu, and they have a great pass rush on their team as well. I'd rather see the Texans any day than the Chiefs right now, who are hitting a stride right now, and they're playing their best football of the year.
Yeah, matchup-wise, the Kansas City Chiefs are not a good fit for the Buffalo Bills, especially at Arrowhead Stadium. You know, they've got playoff experience now with the run they had last year. They're going to be hungry to repeat and try to get to the Super Bowl after their disappointment last year. I don't want to face Tyreek Hill. I don't want to face Travis Kelce. I don't want to face Patrick Mahomes. This offense does not have the firepower to stay with Kansas City. And I don't want to put my defense in a position to try to do the almost impossible by holding this Chiefs offense to 17 points or less. It's just not going to happen. Having said that, the Houston Texans are the much better matchup. Now, there's only 3 players on the Texans that I have issue in terms of, having any kind of fear of playing against. Is that obviously it's Deshaun Watson. He can have a superb game and throw for 4 or 5 touchdown passes, run for a couple if need be when he's really on. J.J. Watt obviously has given the Bills problems in the past, and Hopkins, the wide receiver, who the Bills have an immediate mismatch against. He's had a lot of success against the Bills as well in the past. It's just a matchup issue. But if we can, and this is a team that we can keep to that 14 to 17 point threshold defensively, while our offense gets things together, gets things moving, and squeaks out a win on the road. All you have to do is win. We don't care about style points. 1-point win, 2-point win, 3-point win. This team can get it done, especially if the defense can turn the ball over against a Texans team which can be prone to turnovers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Texans, I feel that we're in a very similar boat with this team in that both teams have a young quarterback that is still developing. Watson is clearly far ahead of Josh Allen, but at the same time, Watson doesn't have a great defense behind him like Josh does. He had his running back addition this year, Carlos Hyde, who had his first 1,000-yard rushing season. So we're both solid in the running back department, and obviously Watson has an all-pro, a perennial all-pro in Hopkins to throw to all the time. And other than that, I mean, I don't see where the Texans really match up. Their offensive line is still one of the worst in the league outside of Laramie Tunsil that they had to trade for. And then, like I said, defense, they can't get a rush, and that means their corners look worse for it. Their secondary isn't that bad, but I mean, when you don't get a rush, they're going to be terrible because you can't cover everybody for 7 seconds every play. So I really like the matchup there for all the reasons that you said as well. Just a good team, but easily the most vulnerable team that the Bills could play.
Absolutely, and probably the best matchup for this young Bills team that they can have of the entire 6-team or 5-team field, if you will, in the AFC playoffs. All right, so let's move forward ahead. Obviously, next week is a meaningless game against the Jets. So Jordan and I are going to talk about some MVPs for the Bills. We're going to go basically position by position, the most valuable player at their position for the Buffalo Bills. We're going to go running back, wide receiver, tight end, best offensive lineman, best defensive lineman, best defensive back, best linebacker, and best special teams player. So I will start with the MVP of the running back position. And it's between two players, obviously, Devin Singletary and Frank Gore. And for my money, it's got to be the rookie, Devin Motor Singletary, who's had a phenomenal rookie season, probably the best rookie season at that position since Thurman Thomas back in 1988.
He reminds me so much of what we wished we had from LaShawn McCoy sometimes, because you remember those runs with McCoy where he's just dancing around and then he does all this work only to get like 2 yards, and now it's 3rd and 8 because he was doing all that for nothing. Devin Singletary, you love the way he makes his cuts because he's always running forward, and he only makes that sidestep because he sees another lane to go forward. He doesn't sit there and try to juke a guy completely out of his shoes for 10 minutes like he's crossing him up like Allen Iverson out there. He's clearly making a conscious cut to go forward, always diving forward and falling forward, a tough runner. He's only 5'7", but he's still 203 pounds, so he'll run over you anytime with his low center of gravity. And in the receiving game, I think there's a lot of opportunity for him in the future, and he's only going to get better there.
I think he's going to be a star in the NFL. Just imagine him next year. The Bills are going to continue to upgrade their offensive line. They're not going to stand pat on that because of obviously what they have invested in Josh Allen and the team overall. So imagine him with an even better offensive line, more experience under his belt. I think the kid is a star in waiting, and I think we have in our hands a 1,500-yard rusher next year with double-digit touchdowns, which is going to be
wow.
1,500 yards, 10, 11 touchdowns. He's got it. And there's not going to be any more discussion or figuring out, well, what do we have here with him? We know what we have with him. Whoever's going to be the backup, I don't think it's going to be Frank Gore. I don't expect Frank Gore back next year. But whoever's going to be the backup isn't going to be anywhere near the ability to push Devin Singletary for carries. And I think you're seeing that already because last week, Devin Singletary was the running back. Frank Gore didn't get one carry. He didn't get one touch. I'm not saying that it was okay, but I think it is a harbinger to come that the Bills and Brian Daboll realize that Devin Singletary is their man moving forward for this franchise. All right, so let's go to wide receiver. Again, this was an easy pick for me. I think we're going to agree on this one as well. And the wide receiver MVP for the Bills this year has got to be John Smoke Brown.
Yeah, Smoke Brown should have been a Pro Bowler. A lot of Pro Bowlers got the nod this year simply based off reputation, but in terms of production, there's few that beat John Brown in the AFC. He had that long streak of having 50 yards in a game. He's added a verticality element to the offense because Josh Allen has finally connected on some deep balls towards the end of the year. Beautiful pass and route last week against the Patriots, and Stephon Gilmore, who people try to call the best corner in the league. But yeah, John Brown at every level of the field, he's making plays deep or mid-range or even short passes here and there when they do give it to him. Always reliable for Josh Allen.
Imagine again the production next year of the Bills getting a free agent or a young playmaker in here that can take the heat off Josh Allen. That's only going to open things up more for John Brown and the types of routes that he can run. And he has shown himself to be a lot more of a complete receiver than he has in Baltimore and Arizona. So he's found a home, and the Bills are happy to have him. All right, moving along, the MVP for tight end. I think my pick is going to surprise a lot of people. I'm going to go with Lee Smith. And I'm doing it. Yeah, I mean, when you think about what the Bills have at the wide receiver position, obviously Tyler Kroft is out of the running. He just didn't have enough. He was hurt the majority of the year. He didn't have enough time to do anything for the Bills. And then you have the two rookies, Dawson Knox, who's had a good year, who's their leading receiver at that position. But I think at the end of the day, Lee Smith and what he brings to that offensive line, his level of blocking, we know that he's not a pass catcher. We know that he's had a lot of maddening penalties that have driven me crazy, although they have subsided over the last 3 or 4 games, which is a good thing. But I think his value to the team is underrated when you compare it to what Dawson Knox has provided to the team. Dawson Knox has been spotty in his production, dropped a lot of passes, but I think Lee Smith has been consistent and what the Bills have asked him to do in terms of helping to lock down and be a blocker on that offensive line. So Lee Smith gets my vote for best tight end on this team, MVP-wise, in terms of production.
Wow, I did not think you would pick Mr. Holding himself for the MVP right here. But, I mean, I've been talking about all show, but I'm going with Dawson Knox. Sometimes you need that big play. You need that lightning rod. And like you said, he's spotty. But when he needs that big play, I mean, we get it from him. Like last week, that deep bomb that he caught from Allen on that absolute dime he threw. And to be able to bring that in, that was a huge play for Knox. I remember earlier in the year when he had that great play against the Bengals, and it was a pivotal play in that game because the Bengals, they were not. They're obviously bad, and they've locked up the number one pick, but at the time they didn't seem like cellar dwellers like the Dolphins or the Redskins did. They just looked like a struggling team, and the Bengals really could have came away with that game, but Knox made a huge play. I remember making the catch and throwing a guy off him, and sometimes you need those big chunk plays out of him, and he's provided that spacing for the offense and that large catch radius for Josh. So that's my MVP pick right there.
All righty, let's move along to best offensive lineman. Jordan, who do you have as the Bills' best offensive lineman MVP?
Yeah, I got Mitch Morse. I really think that signing was well worth it this year. He opens up a lot of running lanes, and the center is essentially the quarterback of the offensive line. He's the guy calling out the blitzes. He's the guy calling out what gaps and what double teams we need to do to open up lanes or to make sure Josh Allen is protected. And I really appreciate what Morse has done for this position. I don't think we've had a center this good since Eric Wood. So thank God he's here.
Well, I mean, I would have gone with Mitch Morse. I think he's had a couple nagging injuries that have kind of like pushed him back in my mind in terms of the best overall lineman for the Bills this year. So I'm going to go with Deion Dawkins. I think he's done a phenomenal job and an unheralded job with some of the assignments he's had. He doesn't need a lot of help. He doesn't need a lot of double team help to block a lot of edge rushers. And he's just been solid week to week. Very few holding penalties. And I think he is a higher Pro Bowl alternate than Mitch Morse. I'll have to look back at those alternates again. But I think he could have gone higher in terms of his Pro Bowl consideration. But I think teams are just now getting to learn and understand how much improved he is. And, I just think he's a solid tackle. And he's a guy that's going to be here for a long time. And the Bills really appreciate his effort and his improvement that he's brought to the table for this season. Moving along, defensive back. This is so easy. So without explanation or further ado, it's Tre'Davious White. Case closed.
Yeah, Trey White, Goalie Academy, best corner in football. Not much you can say. He's locking down your top guy every single week, day in, day out, and somehow all the credit goes to Stephon Gilmore. But this is the best corner in football. We got him on our roster. Again, I'm glad he's here.
All right, moving along again, let's go to linebacker. There may be some discussion between two guys that have had outstanding years, but in my mind, in terms of his responsibilities, in terms of his production, and in terms of what they ask him to do week to week, and how young he is, and how much he's grown from his rookie season to this season, Tremaine Edmonds has been phenomenal. And I thought he should have been a higher expectation or a higher possibility of making the Pro Bowl this year. I think he'll make it next year because he'll crack that glass ceiling. Teams are in the NFL just getting to know him, but Tremaine Edmonds, to me, the best linebacker. Honorable mention to Milano, who's had a really good season, a great season for him, as a matter of fact. I didn't think he was as good as he's shown himself to be this year. But again, Tremaine Edmonds, who calls the plays, he calls the adjustments. He's the quarterback of that defense. They ask him to cover probably 50% of the time as opposed to just stuffing the run. He covers linebackers, he covers tight ends. Sometimes he'll cover a slot receiver. They ask him to do so much, and he's done so much in response to his great production.
Yeah, he's he's a guy I think will be a future superstar. We're looking at a guy who's going to become a top 10, if not top 5 linebacker in this league for all those reasons that you said. He's such a smart player for only being 21 and in his second year right now. He's calling out the plays on the defense, on this top 5 defense that we have here. So just for him to be the leader so young, and he's only going to get better from here. He's already a Pro Bowl alternate, and I fully expect him to cement his name next year as easily top 5 in the AFC in terms of the linebacker position.
All right, so we have one more position to fill, and that would be the special teams unit. So we had to kind of like scratch our noggins a bit and kind of think about who's had the most impact on this team, special teams wise, because they've had an inconsistent year, to say the least. So my pick is going to go to the guy who led the Bills in special teams tackles this year, and that's going to be Saron Neal as the special teams MVP for the Bills.
Okay. Yeah, the gunner, always a good pick, making sure we don't have a bunch of stuff run back on us. I'll go with Andre Roberts. He was brought here to return kicks. There's very few times where you're like, oh, why did he take that out the end zone? Or, oh, why did he not fair catch that? He's always turning nothing into something for this team and at least getting us past the 25. And I mean, that's all you can really ask for.
Absolutely, good pick there as well. I think it's really good to see this front office and this Bills team really come together and really show the NFL how it can be done, getting the right people, getting the right culture into that locker room, and nothing but great expectations for this Bills team and this organization moving forward. All right, Jordan, that'll do it for another episode of Triple Threat Podcast.
Wait, don't forget the D-line.
Oh, I did skip the D-line. I'm sorry. So let's talk about that. The defensive line very quickly. My pick is going to go to the beast in the middle who's had an incredible contract year, which makes me squeamish about re-signing him because it just came out of nowhere. And that would be Jordan Phillips, who's had a phenomenal year at that defensive tackle spot.
Yeah, that's who I got too. He's number 2 in terms of defensive linemen for sacks behind Aaron Donald. And if you're doing something where you're right behind the defensive player of the year, you get my MVP vote every single time.
Absolutely. So a lot to look forward again, as I said, for this Bills franchise and this team. And without further ado, we are going to wrap things up because I'm looking so forward to getting this Jets game out of the way, making sure that everyone's healthy and can be as healthy as possible. So the Bills are going to have to be smart about their substitution patterns and, not necessarily worry about guys getting rust, just for 1 week. So having said that, Jordan, thanks so much for joining me. And we'll be back next week to talk about the big upcoming matchup with hopefully the Houston Texans as the Bills seek to get their first playoff win in a mighty long time. Thanks again for listening to Triple Threat Podcast. My name is Ken Triplett with Jordan Triplett. We'll see you next time.